Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss the buzz around the concept that Boris Johnson may be moving closer to another couple of humiliating U-turns, I suppose, this autumn, with the most damaging one for him politically being the acceptance that maybe we need some sort of second COVID lockdown after all. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news in politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, normally when you talk about the potential for a government U-turn, I would just have to introduce that. Everyone would know what I was talking about, because at any one time there's unlikely to be more than one really contentious issue that a government has formed a policy on, because an intelligent government knows you don't want to fight too many battles at once. You may have to pursue some unpopular policies. You don't do too many at once. But with Boris Johnson's crew, it could be any number of things. His government has already stood firm on blindingly unpopular policies to great political cost, like, for example, sticking by Dominic Cummings, and U-turned on many others in order to limit the political damage, like, for example, free school meals for starving children over summer. Right now, Boris Johnson could well be having to backtrack on his unlawful internal market bill. Starving children in poverty this Christmas. That's a U-turn he's already made. If he makes it again, it's two U-turns for one policy. What the hell? But the one that may be more imminent is the refusal to accept the expert scientific advice to have some form of lockdown. Again, we're not talking about quite the same situation that happened in spring. Now, under any circumstances, a second lockdown could, of course, be seen as a failure. You know, the first one you sort of understood, or it all caught us out by surprise, but then we were supposed to have learned, and we should be ready for the second wave. An actual full national lockdown is the ultimate tool for putting a firewall around households. It basically says, don't go out, and bringing the rate of infection back down, of course. That's the whole point of it. A test, trace and isolate program, along with distancing behaviours and use of face masks, is the preferred way of managing the pandemic long term. That's what you want in place and to be working. But when the test and taste program cannot cope, some form of lockdown is really the only lever you have left. Now, the World Health Organization's envoy on COVID, Dr. David Nabarro, has said that lockdowns should only be used as a reserve measure. He said that what we really need is a robust test, trace and isolate system. So politically, and unfortunately COVID is very political in the UK, you could take from his interview one of two things depending on where you were on the political spectrum there. So those on the right, and in particular I mean those on the right who are sort of anti-COVID restrictions, will seize on the notion that what this guy is saying is that another national lockdown should be avoided. Because he did say that. Secondly, if you're sort of more on the left, then you will seize on the comments about needing a robust test and trace system, which we do not have, and point to the need to take it from Serco and other ill-equipped private companies who are the reason for our failure, and bring it entirely into the NHS, who are managing their own allocation of the programme efficiently and effectively. Their small portion of test and trace is done well. So why don't we get them to do all of it? But the way I see it is this. The fact of the matter is we can argue the pros and cons of all of these things. Boris Johnson is not going to remove test and trace from the private companies and use the money to invest in the NHS instead. That's not happening. He had the opportunity to do that 2 or 3 weeks ago, turned it down. It's never happening. Our only hope of test and trace ever being good enough to be fit for purpose is some major breakthrough, and these breakthroughs do happen in terms of testing, some major breakthrough that means that testing is so good that even Dido Harding, the head of test and trace, cannot cock it up. Some sort of miracle, basically. Now that means, in reality, our situation is only going to become so bad that a national lockdown of some form is inevitable. Again, I'm seeing reports in the media about more advances in testing, and the government are going to announce. Remember Operation Moonshot? They were going to test, on average, every person roughly once a week. Okay, 10 million people a day. Yeah, nice one. Now it's going to be about 10% of the population. They've scaled it down a little bit. I'm going to get about 10% of the population. Even that would be impressive. Is that going to happen? No, of course not. It's another proud boast. Normally you would look at something like that and say, oh, I wonder what their plan for that is. But this is a government with no plan. It's never had a plan. So I think this is just them announcing something else to... Because you can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to get people to go, they've just announced, they're really terrible, we need to take them to account. Oh, they've just announced this thing. Oh, it's getting better. They do it with the economy all the time, don't they? The economy fails, joblessness. The government go, but we're just seeing the green shoots of recovery, or we're just about getting there. It was hard times, but we came through it and we're just about there. They're doing the same thing. It's tried and tested methods. They're doing the same thing with COVID. Oh yeah, it's been really bad, tough times, but we're just there. We're just about there. We're just about to have this thing. We're going to be able to do this thing. Never comes, does it? Never comes. Now, this has been the case for weeks. That this national lockdown has been on the cards. So why might there be a sense of imminence? Well, the front pages today, the mainstream media for one thing. The rising number of cases has featured prominently on a number of papers of a number of political leanings. And then there was the Daily Mail. So this is a very far right-wing anti-COVID restrictions newspaper with the huge headline, "Don't do it, Boris." Now, as with others of their type, they are trying to suggest to people that experts, people who know what they're talking about, are actually arguing against a lockdown. Say it does more harm than good. And of course it does do harm. But as they also have to acknowledge, the Prime Minister has just been given figures that suggest that the second wave could kill 85,000 people. That is on top of the 60,000 excess deaths we already have at this point. So why this headline from the Mail, unless they are getting the impression that the Prime Minister is maybe close to breaking? Now, it might also have something to do with the fact that France and Germany have also announced lockdowns of sorts, not quite the same as happened in spring. And likewise, I don't believe Boris Johnson would impose restrictions as severe in the spring. He's not even been called to do that. Though the longer he delays, the more difficult it will be to wrest control of infections back. And in case you hadn't noticed, we are heading towards winter, a time when our healthcare system collapses even without a deadly pandemic. And it's also been noted, thanks to the fact that even his 3-tier restrictions are not being used properly in the south of England for political reasons, to let off conservative areas with economically damaging restrictions. The rate of infection there is climbing very high indeed. The problem with exponential growth is when you get it, it gets out of hand very quickly, matter of days. And as been said before, COVID moves faster than Boris Johnson's decision making. He's always delaying decisions. How many times now has he said, we're going to be announcing this, these measures, we'll do it after the weekend. And they've sometimes done that on a Thursday. We'll announce it after the weekend. Nearly a week later. He'll say he's going to announce something after the weekend, and then days later, by the time he actually has announced it, the number of cases has massively increased. Imagine an alarm going off to alert police that an armed bank robbery is in progress, and their response is, we'll sort it out next week. That'll be fine. We are currently on an average of over 20,000 new cases confirmed each day. Now, the experts work on the notion that the real number of new cases will be 5 times as high, due to the very high proportion of asymptomatic carriers that you'll never spot because our testing program cannot routinely test people. So we're actually on about, they reckon, 100,000 new cases a day. Now contemplate that. Boris Johnson is certainly contemplating it. Or if not that, more specifically contemplating what it will mean for his government if the projected figures for the much more serious hospitalisations and deaths come to pass. People being infected is bad. It's bad for the economy because they can't go to work, they've got to isolate. Hospitalisations cause the NHS to melt. Deaths cause a lot of people to be very angry with him. The latest figures tell us that the rate is doubling every 9 days. Now that means if you just delay something for a week, if you delay doing something useful for a week, bang, you've nearly doubled your number of infected people. Congratulations. Then there's also the pressure I talked about this week from Northern Conservative MPs, insisting that Boris Johnson announce a strategy for getting communities out of restrictions. Now that, combined with the worsening outlook for winter, is likely to force him to do something. Now, it doesn't have to be a full national lockdown where restrictions are the same everywhere, of course. In fact, surely it's still the case that what we actually need is a regional approach. I think we've always needed a regional approach. But the problem with the government's current regional approach, because people may say, well, they have a regional approach. Yeah, but it's a crap one. It's not working. And it is also not being consistently applied. Take two areas, for example, they could be twins. Let's say you've got two areas in different parts of the country, same rates of infection, same population, same spread of population, same economic activity, same everything. But one is a traditional Conservative area and the other is more traditionally another party, probably Labour. And the government will apply measures to those two places differently. There isn't a set of clear criteria, which there needs to be. So he's playing political games with it. It's applying a political solution to a genuine problem. And the thing about a genuine problem, it's not impressed with political tomfoolery, only real solutions. The infection is still really bad in the north of England, but it is massively increasing in every region in England. Every single region is much worse now than it was a few weeks ago. But the problem with Boris Johnson trying to announce some sort of genuine measures, whatever they may be, are as follows. 1, most of his MPs are against it. Quite a few of them vocally so. 2, most of the right-wing media are against it. They're always vocally so. And 3, Labour have called for Johnson to apply a circuit break in line with the scientific advice. So the Prime Minister, if he wants to avoid complete humiliation, needs to think of a measure that is a circuit break, because he knows it's the only thing that's going to work, but in a way that he gets to call it something else. But that's where we are now. Certainly the press seem to be sensing some potential political movement, but who knows when that will be. You would think in the next week, unless they've misread the situation. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. But those are my thoughts. That's where we are right now. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.